Hey guys, this is Stephanie and I'm Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. Today, I'm coming to you with another book to movie discussion. Today, we are going to be discussing Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Now, I read this book about a year ago, and I loved it. And then I found out that Agatha Christie is this amazing authoress who, she wrote books almost 100 years ago. I think it's 80 years ago she wrote most of these books. And they're completely amazing. Like, the plots she has in these, if you read these, you're going to be like, well, I read that plot. That's not new. That's because they stole it from her. For real. She wrote so many books, and she was a woman ahead of her time. She had such a creative mind, and I adore her. So I had very high expectations for this movie, and I did not want them to screw it up. Now, I do also want to briefly talk about the movie that they had made in, I want to say 1976 with Albert Finney. I didn't like that one. I own it. And I watched it maybe a month ago or so. My roommate and I watched it together, and I thought his interpretation of Hercule Poirot was weird and awkward. He wouldn't move his neck, he would talk to people and then it was a little RoboCop for me. So I wasn't a fan. The other supporting characters were okay, but I did like the new one with Kenneth Branagh. First of all, let's talk about the book. This book was written in 1934, so probably before most of you were born. Basically, it is a book about a bunch of people who were on a train, which is the Orient Express, and somebody gets murdered on that train, and it's a whodunit. Now, if you haven't read this book or seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, I'm going to encourage you to stop watching now because I am going to spoil things. But if you don't care about being spoiled, or you're like, I saw the movie or I read the book and that's good enough, then by all means, join us for more. So basically, we have a bunch of passengers on the train, and then there's a guy named Hercule Poirot, and he's a super famous detective, Belgium detective. Belgius? I don't know. He's from Belgium, and he's a detective. And he's super well known for kind of being a jerk and having this funky little mustache thing, which they really did. I mean, the mustache is huge. It is literally a third of his face. I'm not exaggerating. And they talk about it in the book it's his pride and joy, and I'm like, But then, I know some guys that their beards are their third child, and I'm like, all right, I guess. But he is known for being this incredible detective who can basically predict what you're going to say and how things are going to go, and he can read people and mannerisms and all that kind of stuff. Side note, I don't know about you, but I've always kind of wanted to have a detective. I want to sit down in a chair and have them tell me what I do for a living and how old I am and where I live and all that crap from how I dress and stuff like that, because I don't think I have tells of where I'm from and how old I am and all those things like that. But, maybe I do, and I just don't realize it. So I think it'd be fun to have somebody, detect me or whatever that is. Anyway, so he's this super famous detective. This is actually the 9th Hercule Poirot book. So it was the 9th book she wrote with him as the, I guess you could say hero, I guess. But he is the guy who solves the crime. And he just happens to be on this train. He was not hired to take a look at this and see what happened like he was in the other books. I've only read, I think, 1 or 2 of his other books. He's not my favorite main character in that Agatha Christie writes. So I actually tend to read her other books, not the Hercule Poirot's, but I like this one. He's actually wanting to take a vacation and get away. So that is why he is on this train. And then somebody dies, and his friend is the owner of the train. And so he is oh, you got to help me out, Herc. And he's okay, fine, I will. Grudgingly, but he helps him out. So then he interviews all the people individually who are on that train car. Only the people that could have actually killed him, this man that was killed. And he deduces from that how they're all connected, and it's pretty impressive. Just going through the stuff I read in the book, I never would have put 2 and 2 together. So obviously he has other information about it, and they kind of build the case. So oh, she killed him. Oh no, he killed him. No, she killed him. And you kind of don't know, and that's kind of the point. But biggest spoiler of all, they all killed him. Yes, they did. All 11, 12 people on the train, all grouped together, and we're all gonna be there and we're all gonna kill him, and then they do. So it's crazy because I didn't see it coming. When I was reading this book, I was like, oh no, I know who it is. I know who it is. And as he's revealing the plot, I was like, okay, no, it's him. Okay, no, it's him. And I kept changing and I couldn't figure it out. It's all of them. It was a fantastic twist. And I just ruined it for you. If you didn't read it, shame, shame, shame for watching this far in the video, because it's a great giveaway of the book. And I would have to say an even bigger twist is Hercule Poirot, who's this like pinnacle of justice in the world and what is right and good and blah, blah, blah. And he cooperates with the police and all of these things. He actually doesn't turn them in because he thinks that their crime is justified because the man that they killed was a bad, bad man. So I'm not going into too much detail with that, but that is what the book is about. Now, the movie, the one with Kenneth Branagh, it actually has a full star cast, which sometimes full star cast movies are either like super great or they're like poop on your shoe. This one actually was pretty good. I was expecting poop on my shoe because the reviews were like really bad and I didn't think it was bad at all. I will say they did navigate a little bit farther away from the book. They added some action sequences and stuff like that. There's a part where he's on the luggage cart of the train where there aren't any people, just bags and stuff. And I think he was looking for something. And a guy comes in and he shoots him and he tries to push him off the train. And he almost pushes him off the train, but he doesn't push him off the train. So that doesn't happen in the book. And actually the book is very slow and it is very paced and it is very plot driven book. It is not action driven and it is somewhat character driven, but it is not the typical book that people are going to be like, this is an amazing book. Most people want action or romance, and there really is very, very, very little romance, like sentences. And there really isn't a lot of action either. So they added that for the movie. They added more romance, they added more action, and I didn't think that it really took away from the plot. I really didn't think so. They also made Hercule Poirot, in the book, he is a bit of a jerk and a huge know-it-all, and like you would be like, well, you know, you could make a statement and say, well, the grass is green out there, and he'd say, actually, the grass is a summer green, or something like that. Like he'd correct you just to kind of put you in your place, something like that. So he's not the most likable character, in my opinion, when he is written. However, in the movie, they made him pretty likable. So he had his tics and he was a little rude, but his rudeness was like exquisite etiquette kind of rudeness. So like, he would never sit unless he was invited to sit. So if you just sat down, he would be like, well, that is very rude. And one should not sit at a table without being invited to sit at a table. And he would stand there until you're like, please have a seat. And then he would sit. So it is kind of still this know-it-all jerkish thing, but it's kind of more rotating around like etiquette and manners and things like that. So to me, it didn't seem quite as rude and crappy as he is in the book sometimes. Kenneth Branagh definitely made him more likable. I also would have to commend Michelle Pfeiffer. I thought she was incredible. I haven't seen her in movies in a few years, I think, and I like her fine. I just kind of lost track of her. I don't know what she does anymore. She was incredible. She played the grandmother of the little girl that was killed. So in more detail, what had happened was all these people were planning to be on this train at the same time because there was a guy who had basically abducted and murdered a very innocent little girl, like 4-year-old girl or something, very young. And it is roughly based on Charles Lindbergh because his baby was stolen. He was a famous pilot, and the guy in the book, famous pilot, baby stolen. And then the baby's abducted and killed, and out of grief, the father kills himself and the mother dies out of grief while she's pregnant with another kid. So sad, so sad. So the people on the train who want this guy dead are like the nursemaid who was supposed to be watching the baby but fell asleep, and the chauffeur who was so loyal to this family, and then just these horrible things happened. The grandmother, the godmother, and just all of these people on this train are somehow connected to this little girl who he killed, so they want to kill him. Which is why at the end, when Hercule Poirot kind of lets them all go, it's kind of like, well, this man was a monster. So, I mean, yes, it's murder, but they murdered a monster. Like, they did the world a favor. But still, very good movie. I also would have to say William Dafoe did a very good job. The character in the book that he played, I found forgettable. And in the movie, I was like, oh my goodness, he's so good. How did I forget this character? I also really liked, what's her name? Daisy. She's from Rogue One. I'm forgetting her name. She did a great job too. And I just liked how different the character was. Like, I've seen her in a few different things, and she's just an amazing actress is what it is. But I really liked the way she portrayed that character as well. She was the governess to the little girl. And then one of the bigger changes they did have was instead of they had a doctor in the book that just happened to be on the train, he was in a different cart, so he clearly couldn't have killed the guy. So when the guy's dead, Herc Poirot's like, doctor, come here, check this guy out. And the doctor's like, yes, he's dead. He probably died between this time and this time, blah, blah, blah. Well, in the movie, they make the doctor one of the 11. So that's a little bit different. And they make him black, which was a really great. Then we got to see how black people were treated in Europe in the 1930s and kind of how relationships between a white woman and a black man was still frowned upon back then, which is weird and ridiculous, but it was. But it was just another layer to add to the movie, and I thought it was a good layer, though it is completely different than the book. The guy who played his assistant, Josh, I don't remember his name, he was Olaf. He did a pretty good job too. I don't think I've ever seen him not be funny, so I liked that. And the guy who played Herc Poirot's friend who owned the train, actually it was his dad that owned the train. I don't remember that part in the book, but he was really like young, which I didn't envision, and like jokey and like quite the womanizer. And I liked that. It made the character a little more endearing and more human versus the uptight, stuffy British man that I envisioned him to be when I was reading the book. Also, the opening was really great. They had an opening with Herc Poirot, so he was like finishing up the case before, which was actually not the book before, but that's okay. And he was cleverly finishing that up. That was kind of the intro. So you could kind of see how genius his brain is and how it works and everything like that as he ties that case up in a nice bow, and then he gets on his little train and, oh no, there's a murder. Will you please help? I don't want to help. I'm on vacation. Would you please help? Okay, fine. I will. Only because you said I'm the smartest man in history. Something along those lines. And then at the end of the movie, he gets off the train and he is like, okay, I'm really going on vacation this time. I'm really going to go. And he gets his telegram and they're like, they need you. Apparently there was a murder on the Nile, which is another Herc Poirot book, but it's a few down the line. It's like number 15 or something like that. It's not the next one, but it is another very, very well-known one. And I did like those little additions as well. I thought that they made the character more rounded, and they definitely made the character more likable because, like I said in the book, he's not particularly likable. People don't read this book because they like Herc Poirot. People read this book because of the twist, plot, ending. So all in all, I'm having a really hard time choosing if I like the book or the movie better because I loved this book. I read it last year and then I reread it this month just so it would be fresh in my mind before the movie. And I think I liked it about as much the second time as I did the first time. And then I really enjoyed the movie. I liked the characters. I loved the actors. I loved the visual. Again, there were some differences in how the train got stuck and how they got them out and things like that. But differences aside, and I understand they have to like dress things up more for Hollywood, I'm going to give it a tie. And I've never done that, but I really love the book, but I really like the movie. Like, I will buy this movie when it comes out, probably next year on Black Friday sale because I'm super duper cheap. But still, I will buy this movie because it was great. Like, I want to watch it again. I want to see it again. I want to see the characters again. I super duper duper enjoyed it. So that is what I have for you guys on Murder on the Orient Express. I want to know if you've read the book or you've seen the movie and what you thought about both of them. Leave those comments down below because I am dying to hear. Also, tell me a book that you think should be turned into a movie soon, and leave that down below too. I post videos on Tuesdays and Fridays, so you can look forward to seeing me then. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, whatever it is you feel like doing, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Goodbye! Let me see, what year was this written? Let's see here. It was written in 1934.